Mr. Galvin, we've missed you.
Who let that child in here?
That's right, Andy. Come on, we need an adult in the room.
I see everyone except Scott.
Let me, I think we'll just proceed. Cool. How are we on capacity here, Chris?
51.
Cool. All right.
Is Scott voting?
The only member to recuse here would have been Joe. And I don't, do you see it even on right now?
I've recused as well.
And you've recused as well, Claire?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so Claire's just watching.
Yeah.
So how many, do we have 7 voting members then that have seen all the hearings? Chris, you got to figure that out for me.
Yeah, no one missed the meeting. It's just we're waiting for Scott.
Then we could open the meeting. You could do some light business. We could swear in our new board member, but we shouldn't proceed on this case until Scott's here. And do you want to call him real quick and make sure he's coming?
Yeah, I'll call.
Okay. And I'm the second alternate, so that would suggest that there are 8 people ahead of me. Though, if Joe remains on?
No, Joe's recused, so we want Scott
Okay.
to join.
Yeah, so you do. Yeah, okay. Or this would be a real short meeting.
Well, we would proceed and then we would hold the vote to the next meeting, and we don't even know if we're going to get to vote tonight, depending on when the case is going to be heard. But if somebody misses a small bit of it, we can't vote.
Mhm.
So they have to see the whole thing. So 5 minutes now is worth it.
Yeah.
Diana, the dog can't vote.
She's smart.
I have no objection to the dog voting.
Okay, that's it. Can't go in and out.
Any sign of him, Chris?
No, emailed him and gave him a call and left a voicemail.
Cool. So Dennis, by my count, and just sorry before we proceed, we'll be 7 if we do welcome our 4th alternate to vote this evening. Right, Chris, we have Spur, Newell, Yuko, Mullen, Malay, Schwartzstein, and Sager.
Correct.
Well, let's go forward. Diana
Let's
said
go
she
forward.
saw all the hearings. Okay, I got a
Welcome
thumbs.
to the big leagues, Diana. All right, here we go.
If you have any questions, you just ask. I'll answer them. Okay.
Excellent.
Feel
All
pressure.
right, Michelle, you're good?
Yep, there you go.
All right, here we go, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the January 20th, 2021 meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Stephen Spur and I am chairman of the Summit Zoning Board. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. This meeting is being conducted virtually via video conferencing in lieu of meeting in the council chamber at Summit City Hall, Summit, New Jersey. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page. In addition, members of the public can view and participate in the meeting by following the link provided on the agenda. Members of the public may also submit written comments and questions to the zoning board secretary in advance of the meeting to be read aloud during the meeting. Such written comments shall not be considered testimonial and shall not be considered by the board in its determination of any application. Individuals wishing to provide testimony as to any application must participate virtually with both audio and video enabled. In this case, Dennis Galvin is the zoning board's attorney. Welcome back, Mr. Galvin. He will advise the board members on matters of law and is the key interface with an applicant's attorney. Mr. Galvin does not vote on the applications. Chris Nicola is a city employee and the zoning board secretary. Mr. Nicola works with applicants on getting their applications together, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Mr. Nicola also does not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Some applications require 5 affirmative votes to be approved. You'll be told which majority will be required before we begin our deliberations. Mr. Nicola, will you please call the roll of the members?
Chairman Spur,
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Here.
Mr. Yuko,
Here.
Mr. Steiner is excused, Mr. Mullen,
Here.
Ms. Schwartzstein,
Here.
Mr. Malay,
Here.
Mr. Loikitz is not here, but we're expecting him. Ms. Toth
Here.
and Ms. Sager.
Pop off mute and say here.
You're on mute. You got to come off. There you go.
Here, sorry.
All right.
That's right. We all do it.
Okay,
General.
you can proceed.
Thank you, Chris. We generally hear the cases in the order they are listed on the agenda. We try to have each hearing last no more than 30 minutes, and we do understand that some cases are too complex to be heard within that time frame. Each hearing begins with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application and the variances that are required. When we hear from any expert witnesses, the applicant may then have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and board professionals are done with their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. This is not the time to tell us what you think of this case. That opportunity comes at the end of the hearing. Before you ask your questions, we need to know who you are and where you live. It is important that our court reporter be able to keep a clear and accurate public record. Please state your name before speaking or asking any questions. And please do not talk over each other. This is even more important under the current circumstances. I would add as well, if you're not speaking, please mute your microphone so there's no additional background noise. After all witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to speak, and at that time you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. Then the public hearing is closed and we go into executive session where the board members discuss the case and vote. You will be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in the discussion. Most applications are heard and decided in the same evening. If a case requires additional information or testimony that cannot be presented tonight, we will carry the case to another date and it will not be decided tonight. Krista Anderson, the city zoning officer, has asked that I remind all applicants that they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and to pay particular attention to the conditions contained in the resolution. For example, if a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If a grading plan is required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all conditions in a resolution will result in a delay in approving your application, as it will cause extra work for city zoning staff. The resolutions documenting the board's decision will normally be available 1 month after we decide the case. So as for this evening's agenda, we just have one quick administrative matter to attend to, and then we'll give the floor to Beacon Unitarian Church and their application. So Mr. Galvin, if you'll start us off with the swearing in of our newest member. Diana, welcome.
Thank you.
And it's off mute too.
Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Yes.
Diana, raise your hand. State your full name.
Diana Kittredge Stager.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and the state under the authority of the people? And you will solemnly swear that you will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties as a member of the Zoning Board of Adjustment of the City of Summer according to your ability.
I do.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. Welcome, Diana. All right, now to Beacon Unitarian, for which Mr. Kronheim, I believe we were in the middle of your making your case.
That's right. Good evening, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful and healthy holiday. As promised, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. We just have 2 witnesses this evening and a brief summation. I'd like to start just by clarifying, if I might briefly, for the record, a point of law that was raised at the last meeting with respect to the applicant's parking study. There was a statement to the effect that the applicant could rely on the time of application rule to not update its parking study after the passage of the 4 Waldron Avenue ordinance. I did want to point out that the time of application rule, which is codified at 40:55D-10.5, does have an exception for health and public safety. So any provision there, basically I would ask the board just to take judicial notice of the fact that that exception does exist, and therefore the time of application rule does not control in this instance.
I don't agree with you. This is Mr. Galvin. I've argued that point before. I like the fact that you're arguing it now. The case that I argued it in was far more compelling than this, and the courts told me no.
Well, I understood, Mr. Galvin. I just wanted to put that, make sure that was in the record, and also that the 2 ordinances from the
objection is noted.
Yep, just and the 2 ordinances, the June 23rd, or readings of the ordinance from June 23rd and July 8th, also make specific reference to the ordinance being for safety and health. With that, I'll move on.
My case involved putting 2 10-story buildings on the Hudson River that would be in jeopardy in storm waters. But hey, what do I know?
Fair enough.
You may
Mr.
proceed,
Galvin.
Mr. Kronheim. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to call Mr. Marvin, please. Dennis Marvin, please. You're on mute somewhere. There we go. I see you.
I'm here.
All right, Mr. Marvin, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm a testimony about the given this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Kindly state your full name for the record. Spell your last name.
Dennis Marvin, Marvin.
Thank you. You're a witness.
Thanks, you. Mr. Marvin, can you just describe for everyone where exactly do you live?
I live at number 12 Waldron Avenue.
And which side of the street? Can you give us which side of the street of Waldron is that?
It's the church side of Waldron, 2 houses down from where the existing church exists.
Can you tell me what you've observed with respect to people parking in your neighborhood that attend Beacon Unitarian Church?
So we have we've had some parking issues on Waldron Avenue directly related to events that happen at the existing church, compounded primarily on a Sunday when they have had one or two services. That parking issue relates to people that very typically park across driveways, causing problems for residents to get in and out of a driveway. We've had situations where congregants have tried to do K-turns, and there was one case in my driveway where they backed into a person on a bicycle. So we have a continual problem with parking and congestion on Waldron Avenue with the existing structure that we have with the church.
Did you ever raise any of these concerns with the city or the police?
So I guess I'm the one that constantly calls the police. I would suggest I've called the police probably 75 times in the last 5 years or so. They typically would come, they would look at the car that's parked, and I think Kim in the last meeting showed a great picture of the cars that park partially across our driveways. And the police were very lenient. They usually go right into the church and they find someone and they
Come on, Joel.
get them to move the car. So this is a continuing problem, and I have called the police myself directly, yes.
And do you have difficulty seeing out of your driveway when when there are cars parked on the street for the church?
Well, yeah, that's probably an obvious because they park right up to the curb, or right up to my driveway, I should say, where the apron starts. And especially if there's an SUV, you really can't get out of the driveway safely because of all the cars that are parked there.
You can't see.
In 1999, Gary Dean stated that parking will, and I quote, parking will not cause any, parking for the church will not cause any parking or traffic difficulties in the neighborhood. Did you find that assessment to be correct in your experience?
Well, I've been living at Waldron Avenue for 38 years. I attended those same town meetings with the same applicant 20 years ago. I heard this similar comments about the fact that there would not be any traffic or congestion or additional parking issues in my neighborhood. And I think that's probably the furthest from the reality of what happens on Waldron Avenue and then the surrounding streets, primarily DeBarry and of course Springfield Avenue. So I think it's the furthest thing from the truth of what we were told 20 years ago.
Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I think in listening to all the testimonies since this case started, there's been some comments made about primarily on the parking, and I find it interesting that the parking experts are trying to restate the same issues, that there's not going to be a parking issue. And when I view this as we're adding another 400 seats, and arguably on a Sunday, let's say another 200 cars, I envision a nightmare on the corner of Waldron and Springfield Avenue. One of the board members actually asked the parking expert, do they think we need a police officer at the corner? And the answer was no. I believe we're going to need two if we allow this to go forward, because this is really going to be a problem, not only for Waldron and DeBarry and Whitridge and the downtown area. And I know we've had witnesses talk about the congestion in downtown and trying to suggest we don't have a parking issue in downtown Summit, when I think everybody really knows we do. So I find it amazing that we're trying to say that this isn't an issue, and if you add another couple hundred cars, it's not going to be a problem. It is going to be a massive problem at this corner.
And just lastly, may I ask you, do you feel that these the parking issues you just mentioned, does that have a negative impact on you and your residents in the neighborhood?
Well, I think the constant congestion is a problem, and I don't want to be the policeman that always has to monitor it. And I think we've really been focusing on the Sunday now 11 a.m. service, when there is something at this church almost every night. So it's not just a Sunday issue, and there's something there every night. And you don't build a 400-seat building just to use it one day for 1 hour. So I'm envisioning going forward that this is just going to be compounding itself and a bigger problem. We can't get out of our driveways. I'm concerned about safety. There's already been an accident in my driveway several years ago, and I think this is just going to get worse. So we really, I can only encourage you to vote no. But that's what I live every day, living here. And the police come and they're very nice and they're very accommodating to the church, and I get that. But the church also calls the police and say, can you waive the parking restrictions because I have an event? So then we're really not thinking about the residents. So I want my residential street back. That's what I want.
Okay, no further questions.
Mr. Cronheim, just want to, of course, give the board the opportunity to ask any questions of Mr. Marvin. Any members of the board have questions for Mr. Marvin, a resident of nearby area?
I've got one. I know, Mr. Marvin, obviously you've had a lot of difficulties. How would denying this variance restore your residential street? Seems like it would just continue the same condition. And conversely, at your location, how would granting it affect the issue with respect to your residents?
Yeah. I go back, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, but I go back to 20 years ago when I sat through these same meetings, and I wasn't testifying. I would get up and spoke about my concerns about the same issues, parking congestion. We've had flooding issues. We talked a little bit about that the last meeting. And I voiced my opposition back then when I did have a residential street. And so as reality would take it, my residential street has been overtaken by cars continually be there. It's only going to compound itself now with the bigger facility, if that's what happens and we allow this to go forward.
Well, I guess my question is, there's a finite number of spaces on the street. And I think that's going to remain fixed. It's actually been halved with the regulations that recently went into effect. So you can only have so many cars traversing the street and parking there. So how is that going to get worse?
So for me, so obviously it can't get worse for me, can it?
Right.
Is your point. But
That's kind of what I'm getting at, yeah.
I'm thinking about everybody else, and let's face it, at 11 a.m. on a Sunday morning, which has been designed as the worst case scenario here, and everybody thinks it's going to be a nice sunny day and everyone's going to walk to this building. But at 11 a.m., if you got to be there, think about the traffic on DeBerry, on Springfield, both directions.
Right.
The surrounding streets are just going to get all clogged up. And that's what I mean. Maybe my situation won't get worse. I'm pointing out that my situation is pretty bad.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question.
Please.
Mr. Marvin,
Yes.
since you lived in that house for so long, when did you really notice the change in the parking? There was an application in 1999, and I think that changed the capacity of the church. When did you really start to notice a difference with the parking situation in your street, or like a significant change?
So I think that, when they moved, the church used to exist further up on Richrich and Summit Avenue, right? And then they moved down to the corner where they are now, and then they expanded the building in 1999, right? So exactly when, it started to be a gradual situation where once they expanded the existing structure, which was just the church at one point, and then they added on to it in 99, that's when the traffic really started to get worse, primarily on a Sunday, but complicated by all the other events they have every other day of the week as well, which we really haven't talked about. So they came from where they were up on Richrich and Summit Avenue, and they just came down here. They had a parking lot up at the corner of Richrich and Summit Avenue prior to moving down here.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, in the past approximately 20 years, has the parking been such a large issue on your street? Where everyone's parking on Sunday and they're parking and taking up the whole street?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
And just a reminder, if you're not speaking, please mute your microphone. There's some echo here. I think Michelle's struggling a little bit to hear. So if you can please take a moment. Mr. Galvin, I see you're an offender. Ms. Sager, I see you're offending. If you can mute, please. Thank you very much. All right, setting a good example, a better example. Any other questions from members of the board?
Yes, actually.
Your wrist there. Sorry, go ahead, Ms. Sager.
Mr. Marvin, can I ask, I'm not exactly sure when Dangler stopped holding funeral wakes and viewings and funeral services, but was it an obvious decrease in parking events around that time that your neighborhood felt a decrease in parking, a parking crush from time to time when that happened? Or did it seem kind of a non-event when the Dangler Funeral Home stopped doing that business?
Well, I would say that when there was a wake at the Dangler Funeral Home, of course, it was busy during that wake time, obviously. So I would think that when there wasn't, the increase in parking issues were when the church clearly moved to the corner and then expanded their building. I don't recall exactly. I mean, to me, there was only additional parking from the funeral home when there was a wake going on.
Right. Okay.
So whenever, I mean, I don't know how often there was a wake with Mr. Dangler's funeral home.
But when it stopped, were the funerals, was that also a difficult parking crush?
I don't
It was absorbed fairly easily by the neighborhood?
Well, there is a parking lot there now, right? I don't know. I'm sure it came up at the prior meeting, but I'm going to say there's 30 spaces in there, whatever there was. So it was not an overwhelming flow of traffic on our street directly related to a wake.
Okay.
And they had valet. They also had valet. And my wife is reminding me, they had a valet service there as well.
Oh,
I don't know where they parked. I don't know where they parked those cars.
Okay.
But they weren't on Waldron.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Marvin, if you don't mind me just following up on an interesting tidbit you just kind of slipped in there about the Dangler using a valet service. Have you been in contact with the church when they do hold large events outside of, say their regular Sunday services, about perhaps setting up some kind of shuttle service or, remote parking situation that may help to ameliorate these issues?
I have not had that conversation with the church.
Okay. And Mr. Maynard, I'm looking at you here and looking for creative solutions to this this parking question. I don't know if that ever came up in discussion with you and your client as a way to address, especially peak hours of usage of the site.
It's not something I have discussed with them.
Okay. Do you think it's something they'd be amenable to entertaining as a condition to this application?
I don't know the answer to that until I ask. Would have to ask.
All right. I'm leaving that out there as, and I'll leave you kind of my personal experience from, living in the downtown for some time as well, is, especially during the Sunday hours where there's understandably peak utilization of the church site and churches really around the community. The Broad Street garage is largely empty. The middle school lot is largely empty. And it may be a short ride over on a shuttle service to help minimize the Waldron and DeBerry parking requirements. So just a thought we'll put out there, and we can perhaps entertain as further testimonies provided.
Steve, just to add on to that, I actually went out to the Broad Street deck this weekend and walked it, and then did the distance calculations on Google Maps. It's about the same distance as the Woodland and I'd say the western edge of the Maple Street lot. And I think as a commuter, I know the Broad Street lot is basically empty on the weekends. That might be a good solution to have people park there.
Okay, let's proceed with Mr. Kronheim's next witness, and I think we'll have likely a recess in 30 minutes or so. And Mr. Maynard, maybe that's something you want to speak to your clients about entertaining, and we can discuss it a little bit further in the meeting here.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Kronheim?
I'd like to call Nancy Adams to the stand, please.
Hi,
Hi, Nancy.
I'm standing on the stand, just for you.
Mr. Galvin, you going to swear the witness in?
For my mute button. All right. Nancy, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. You may proceed.
Ms. Adams, could you just briefly describe for the board your professional qualifications?
Sure. My name is Nancy Adams. I'm Executive Director of Summit Downtown. Sorry, I'm hearing myself. I've been on the Maplewood Township Committee as an elected official for the last 5 years in my second term. I'm sorry. I think you can just say her that I keep, if she could mute, because I'm here. Thank you so much.
Better.
Thank you. So it's starting to confuse myself. So
So
I'm
why don't you start again? Just your professional qualifications.
I'm the director of Summit Downtown. I've been a professional in downtown revitalization and management for over 25 years. I've managed the downtowns in South Orange, West Orange, Red Bank, Newark, and Summit. I also do consulting in the same field. Part of my background is also, I was the director of the South Orange Parking Authority while I was also running the downtown there for a couple of the years I was there. And I'm certified by the National Main Street Center in downtown management and revitalization. I'm served on the planning board in Maplewood where I live for the last 12 years. So I can relate to the fellow board members here. As I said before, I think I'm serving my second term on the council here, which is called the Township Committee, previously Deputy Mayor.
And do you sit on the Summit Parking Advisory Committee as well?
I do. As part of my work in Summit, I am on the Summit Parking Advisory Committee as a member to talk about, which is basically what we talk about all the time, is parking.
Okay. And could you talk a little about the current condition of the downtown? What kind of headwinds are businesses in the downtown facing due to the pandemic?
Sorry, Mr. Carter, just pause for a quick second. Just to be clear, are you presenting this witness as a parking expert, or it was an impressive resume, but just want to be clear as to how we should contextualize her testimony?
Yeah, we're not looking to certify or not looking to present her as an expert witness with respect to parking in general, only her factual knowledge as it relates to the parking situation in downtown Summit, as she has experienced in her role as director of SDI and through the parking advisory committee. So factual knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Let me start to ask my question for you again. What kind of headwinds are businesses in downtown Summit facing due to the pandemic?
Well, the pandemic, it's been very hard. Obviously, the Summit community has been incredibly generous and wonderful in supporting the businesses downtown. Our restaurants and bars, in particular, those who, usually rely on sit-down business, are in tough shape, and it's going to be a rough few months. Retail is struggling, although, like I said, the community's been good in helping to support them, and many of them have pivoted to try to offer different kinds of services. And SDI has worked with them in getting grants. I've given out about $800,000 worth of grants to over 130 businesses citywide to try to help them pay their bills, pay their staff, keep their employees, and just kind of keep going. But they're all still kind of, it's tough. It's really hard. And we've done everything we can, increasing our marketing, in keeping our events, like pivoting our own events to make them happen. Our part of what SDI does is to attract people to come downtown, to create that downtown that people are looking for, especially residents, to have their sense of community, which is what downtowns historically always have been, for people to interact with their neighbors and friends, to meet at restaurants, to walk and visit the stores. We've worked with the city, as I'm sure everyone has seen, to create sort of emergency parklets for restaurants to put tables outside. The city also waived parking fees during the pandemic to try to remove barriers for people coming downtown. So it's just kind of an ongoing, a lot of work that we've put in to try to help as best we can to keep everybody through this pandemic.
Has the vacancy rate grown through the pandemic?
A year ago, our vacancy rate, I'm proud to say, was less than 1% downtown. That's clearly more now, although this is the time of year that people in my profession tend to kind of wait and see if businesses are, it's typically when businesses close, especially local owned businesses or small businesses, basically. So we're kind of, you usually hold your breath in January, and we're particularly holding our breath in January, February. So yes, it's more than it was a year ago. And unfortunately, I hope not. I don't want to predict that more will close, but you know, we still have more work to do, and hopefully they won't, but they might.
Okay. We'll circle on back on that in 1 second, but I just wanted to, before we move on back to that, I want to know, what is the role of the Parking Advisory Committee in Summit?
At every meeting, we go over statistical information of the parking, the turnover of parking, how many, you know, how to rearrange parking. A good example of that, we're basically trying to find more parking downtown at all times in the confines of what exists. So we play with parking fees, for example, the on-street parking meters that are close to businesses, the most desirable because people tend to want to park closest to their destination. So those are typically more expensive. And the reason for that is if you are willing to walk a block or two, then you can get an hour free parking in the DeForest lots, and then it's cheaper to park there than it is to park on the street. The time is longer in those parking lots as well. So you develop all these strategies and you play with things. Another example is the DeForest lots a year or two ago. SPAC advised and the city agreed to increase the fee, or the fine, I should say, for anyone who's parking in the DeForest lots for more than 5 hours. And that's to keep the commuters out. And that has resulted in more overturning of parking spaces. So that leaves more parking spaces for customers. And that was the goal, because commuters tended to just kind of use that as their parking lot.
So in general, how would you characterize your knowledge of the parking situation in downtown Summit? Do you have deep knowledge?
Yeah, I guess I would categorize it as deep knowledge. I wouldn't categorize my knowledge of the number of spaces and the stats as much as just the general usage or lack of parking and the issues that come up. Right now, they're talking about figuring out where people are going to park when the redevelopment on Broad Street starts taking place, and they move the firehouse next to the Broad Street garage, which will remove all those surface spaces. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into it that, you know, most people don't really think about, nor should you.
And we heard the applicant's planner say that in his experience, he'd never had any trouble finding a parking space in downtown Summit. Do you agree with that statement?
Oh, absolutely not. Parking in downtowns in the 25 years that I've been working in downtowns, most downtowns, right, are historic in nature to a certain extent. Summit is a beautiful historic downtown. The only problem with that is that parking spaces weren't created to the extent that are necessary now because more people drive. You know, once the car was invented and families had a car or two cars, they were more mobile. So in the 70s, 80s, that created strip malls, big box stores, and, you know, Route 22 and Route 10 and all these places that expanded those things. And the first thing those developers build for those stores is parking lots of parking spaces in front of all those stores. Downtowns can't compete with that very easily because on the one hand, you know, the beauty of the downtown, especially downtown Summit, is what attracts people to go there. But you can't create parking because you have buildings. You can't create land where there's no land. So there's just an inherent issue with downtowns with regard to parking. And in Summit, it has always been a problem, in large part because it's also a commuter train station, one of the biggest ones on the New Jersey Transit line. So that creates yet another dilemma of trying to balance downtown employee parking, customer parking, and commuter parking, all in the restraints of the land you have and the parking garages that exist. So yes, it's a problem. It's the parking. It's the issue we hear the most about all the time.
And just to be clear, does downtown Summit have a parking surplus or a parking deficiency?
Definitely a deficiency.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about this application more specifically. If the parking situation were to get worse as a result of this application, what effects would that have on the downtown?
Well, there's several different things. From a more my kind of perspective with regard to business recruitment, and if we do indeed, we have one large vacancy in particular where I brought a business in where the old Staples was. That space is 4,000 square feet. Any larger national or regional chain, the smaller businesses or independently owned small businesses don't tend to need that big a space. It takes a lot of money to sustain that kind of space. So I had recruited Green Street. They closed right after the pandemic hit because they were reducing their locations. But that kind of space, if I'm recruiting a business to downtown Summit, the first question that somebody who needs that big a space is going to ask is about parking. Where are my customers going to park? If I go to a shopping center, if I go to a mall, I'm assured, 100 parking spaces, and I can't do that. That's one of the things that we downtown people always have to battle when it comes to trying to do retail recruitment, because we can't compete with parking spaces. So we have to try to sell the location on all the other wonderful things about it, but that's some corporations or national or regional chains, they just look at it more as a statistic, checklist of what they need. So that would make the lack of parking even worse if the church were to create this 400 seats extra with providing 0 parking spaces.
And so what effect do you think that would potentially have on vacancy rates?
Well, because recruitment would be more difficult, it would be harder to attract new businesses. It'll also be difficult to sustain the existing businesses. People are kind of creatures of habit or not, I don't want to say definitely not lazy, but people want to go someplace and park. They don't want to search for parking. They don't want to circle around for parking. They tend to either come downtown, drive around. If it takes a certain amount of time longer than they want to find parking, then they'll just leave, or they'll go elsewhere, or they'll go somewhere that has its own parking. So it's always a battle to try to help the businesses stay when people can't park to come to them. So you have that with a lack of inventory, and then you have people parking longer in short-term spaces. So you have people who even can't, whether they're delivering for themselves as a business owner, they can't park closely to their business to deliver stuff to their own customers. And by the same token, customers sometimes have trouble. And we're seeing this that's why we set up curbside pickup spaces to try to make it easier for businesses. But the lack of parking is always an issue with regard to all of these issues.
And do you feel that the downtown is important to Summit, the city of Summit as a whole?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think, all these towns on the commuter lines where I live and in Summit and other places, people are moving here and especially now with the pandemic, there's been obviously everyone here knows there's been a huge increase in demand for people who are moving out of Brooklyn, out of New York, out of any of the boroughs to come to areas that have a downtown. They're used to having a town to walk around. They're used to being in a district where they can walk down and go get a drink at the pub or go pick up something at their local place they're used to that, and that's what they want. So the downtowns across the country really are a huge draw for especially the millennial generation that's coming in, and people with kids. They want it. I think anybody on this call will agree that Downtown Summit is one of the main reasons that they love where they live. And it's one of the main draws to buy a house in Summit, and therefore it helps the property values for the residents.
Anything else you want to add?
I guess I would just be, I agree with the last witness on, nobody would be investing in building 400-seat venue if they weren't going to use it more than just Sundays for one service. So logically, it means it's going to be used on a regular basis. And that use, once it's built, can't really be controlled. It could be used 7 days a week for, hours a day. And to fill that kind of seat, those kinds of seats takes a lot of cars. And I am very concerned. And on behalf of the board of Summit Downtown, I can't emphasize enough the concern that these business and property owners are having with regard to this project. And they wish it would be scaled down and more reasonable, or some parking would be provided. The city already removed 36 spaces on Waldron to help that street deal with the excess cars, but all these cars will then just go someplace else, and that'll be either downtown or on streets as they progress. So I just think it's it might be really, really dreadful for Downtown Summit if this gets approved.
And let me just ask one more question for you. The parking study that was conducted by the applicant studied only Sunday mornings. Would you have concerns about other times of the week and the interaction between parking at the church and Downtown Summit?
Yes, definitely. I mean, and removing ourselves from pandemic, right? It's tough to find a spot after 4 o'clock in Downtown Summit. If you're coming down for dinner, or if you're, going out or going to an event or something.
Hang on, sorry, could you just repeat that, Ms. Adams?
Yeah. Even if you're coming downtown for go out to dinner or anything, between the restaurant workers who tend to take parking spaces, after 4 o'clock, and the people coming and the downtown workers who are still there, it's virtually impossible to find a spot. And that's just a negative impact in and of itself, just strictly from the fact of customers, because regardless of how dedicated the Summit residents are to the businesses downtown, which is wonderful, for that volume of businesses, for this size of a downtown, we still need to attract people from surrounding communities, from at least a 5-mile radius, to get people to come downtown to economically support those businesses, because if they don't have that, they can't survive. And if they can't survive, the downtown doesn't survive, and that adversely impacts everyone. So it's really important to think about this, and it's just a real concern that we would be adding a use that requires a couple hundred parking spaces that aren't being provided, because they will find them. They just won't be helpful to the businesses.
And would you have any concerns about Saturday afternoon or evening weddings in particular?
Oh, absolutely. Saturday night is, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night is the lifeblood of the bars and restaurants in Summit, and in most places. Those are the nights that people go out. So if they're going out, they want to be able to get to where they're going.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Questions from members of the board for Ms. Adams?
I had a question about just going back to what you were just talking about. you mentioned it's virtually impossible to find a space after 4 o'clock. I personally haven't had that experience, and I've lived in town for more than 8 years. And I'm just curious, where are you seeing the greatest problems? Is it on street spaces? Is it in the DeForest lots? Is it in the Broad Street lot? And as a member of the Parking Advisory Committee, do you have access to studies that show utilization rates at particular hours in particular places that could sort of validate that opinion?
So yes, yes to both. The first question, I would say you're lucky not to have the problem that I hear from everyone who brings it up or complains or chooses to go elsewhere because they can't find a parking spot. It's just a regular problem, and it depends, what and we try to educate people through social media or through ads about parking sometimes, but it's more of a word of mouth, and people tend to be habitual in that they want to go to where they park, whether that's a DeForest lot or that's an on-street parking spot or the Bank Street lot or the tier garage. The problem with the Broad Street garage and the tier garage is that's not where people tend to go. People hesitate to park in garages generally. So they tend to circle. Of course, environmentally, that's not good, but also, they tend to circle and search, and they want the closest space, and then they tend to make that circle. So I can't attest to your experience, but this is what I hear, and it's what I've experienced, or people coming to our events have experienced.
That's an interesting point you raised. So is this a choice/outreach problem as opposed to a supply issue?
No, to the second part of your question, the information we get on all the reports and other members who, I don't have any of the reports in front of me. I haven't had an SPEC meeting in a few months, but those reports we get every month show the utilization. And this year, of course, is completely an anomaly.
Of course.
But normally there's talking about turnover. That's why they raised the fine for parking more than 5 hours in the DeForest lots, went from $25 fine to a $50 fine, exactly to create that turnover. And so that has alleviated some of the parking, but it's always an issue. And sure, there's always going to be a difficult problem to get everybody to know exactly where all the parking is, unless you're intimately familiar with it. But that's not what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to make it easy for people to come down, find a parking spot, not have to get frustrated looking or parking on the top tier of a garage 2 blocks from where they want to go. It's trying to get the turnover and have people coming there to patronize the downtown restaurants and businesses.
Well, that's sort of what I'm trying to understand a little bit. Anecdotally, my wife complains about the issue she has parking, but it's during the day. And I personally have experienced those parking issues at midday, especially, but the latter part of the day into the evening is when I've personally observed things sort of dissipate a bit. Mm-hmm. And I guess the question, we're trying to wrestle with is clearly the church is probably going to have its most intense usage on Sundays and in evening times during weeknights and or weekends if there's an event. So, what I want to kind of get to the bottom of is, where we're seeing the most intensity of usage and how we can find a way to alleviate the issue that people are concerned with.
Right. That's basically our parking advisory committee meeting every month. Every time we have one, is trying to work at ways to alleviate that. Nighttime parking is a problem because we have wonderful restaurants and bars and people want to come to them. So that's always an issue at night. So I worry about events at the church impacting that in a negative way and further lessening the inventory of parking available to those who would patronize the businesses.
Newell, did you have a question? I saw you hop off mute there earlier.
I did. I just want to know, how many spots do we currently have?
Oh, I was afraid you were going to ask me that. I really don't know the number, and that's why I said in my testimony that I don't have the numbers. I just know what we talk about, and generally what we talk about is that they're full, and how to get them to turn over. And then you have the downtown employee parking. Like I have a downtown employee parking permit, and using those. So I don't know the number of commuter spots. I don't know the number of outside of Summit commuter spots, which is also a category, shopper spots, and what did I leave out? Downtown customer shopping spots. So I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Like going back to the shuttle idea, what do you think about that?
I've actually started when I was running South Orange Parking Authority. I started the Jitney program there to bring commuters to the commuter station in South Orange. I find that jitneys or shuttles tend to work for those long-term type of situations where if you're putting jitney spots in the residential areas and people are just walking a half a block and getting on that to get to the train, that's more likely to be utilized than somebody going to a venue for an hour, hour and a half. We have in Summit, they have had, valet parking a couple of different times that has not proven to be really successful. It's really a human nature thing. People want to drive to where they're going, especially in the suburbs, not so much if you're going into Manhattan, right? But if you're coming to downtown Summit, they want to drive to where they're going and park as close as they can to where they're going.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions from members of the board? I just have one question. Yeah, Ms. Adams, kind of following on what Ms. Newell had suggested, what have you seen in your extensive experience work for downtowns like Summit in instances like this, where there are particular sites of high intensity use for limited periods of time? What would you recommend? Maybe take us to that SPAC meeting and talk us through how the city or some mix of partners could address an issue like this.
Well, not knowing what the limited time or the venue, what kind of schedule a venue would have. It's when I worked in downtown Red Bank, you have two theaters there, right? You have the Two River Theater and the Count Basie Theater. And that parking was always an issue for them as well. Not so much the Two River Theater because they had on-site parking, but the Count Basie, we used to have arrangements for other places, other lots, like the Borough Hall lot that was right across the street from the Basie. So those are the kinds of things, and even there, you had to play with, okay, so now you can allow valet service for the Basie, and they can use the municipal lot across the street, which was fine as long as it was available. And then we had valet parking that we tried on Broad Street, which is their Springfield Avenue, in downtown Red Bank, to limited success. So again, it's usually better run by the venue, and it needs to be consistent, and in and of itself is an investment for that venue to provide either shuttle or valet type service. But even if you have a valet, the problem is you need a place to bring the cars that isn't too far, because typically what happens is you have runners. They're going to get the car and they can't have to run like a half mile to go get a car and bring it back. So it has to be even close. So it kind of makes it difficult to make a valet thing work in a downtown, and for that reason, because those close parking lots are where we already want people who are driving themselves downtown to park. So it's tough.
Okay. All right, Mr. Kronheim, I think we're back to you then.
Oh,
Just watching.
I have a question.
Maynard's question.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Maynard. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Witness.
Go ahead. Yep.
A couple of quick questions. Am I correct that you testified about pre-pandemic, the The occupancy rate in Summit was 99%. The vacancy rate was only 1%. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was less than 1%.
Well, have we removed parking spaces from downtown since the pandemic started, or was it the same parking supply back then?
No, we haven't removed parking.
Okay, and the occupancy rate was approaching 0.
Mhm.
Okay. My other question is, do you consider the street parking on Waldron Avenue part of the downtown parking complex or availability?
No,
You don't?
no.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Maynor. All right, Mr. Kronheim, and just watching the clock, I think what we'll do, Mr. Kronheim, is we'll entertain your summation. We'll take a brief recess, entertain public comment, and then hopefully proceed into an executive session.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'd like to just start with the obvious, that the objectors in this case know that Beacon is a force for good in Summit. We really applaud its mission and its many good works in the community, and I want to be very clear that that's not something that's in dispute.
For a second? Dave,
Yes.
stop for a second. I think we got ahead of us. I was like trying to listen, and I'm concerned about the procedure, Mr. Chairman. I think you should listen to the public comment first, and then Mr. Kronheim should comment off of what he hears as a closing argument, and then of course, counsel for the church can do the final address to the board.
Okay.
Also, I guess at some point you want to take a break because you want me to reach out to the church. Is that correct?
We will.
Okay.
We're going to get there.
Great.
But I didn't want Mr. Kronheim to do his, because what if things come up or are said during the closing during the public? It's the way I've always done it. It's the right way to do it. We gotta listen to the public first.
Yeah, I guess my preference would be to put our case in, and that if there was something that came up and during the public comment, to reserve the right to respond briefly to that. But I know Mr. Maynor put his.
Dave, I thought your case was completely in.
It is completely in, but Mr. Maynor was granted a brief summation at the end of his case as well. So the opportunity for us to do the same, I thought would be appropriate, and obviously he'll have an opportunity to speak at the end.
Well, that seems like fair. Why would I do that?
It's your call. If you prefer for it to have me wait.
I don't recollect it that way. I think I got taken advantage of. I think the proper procedure right now is just cool it. Let's listen to the public.
I have no problem with that if that's how you'd like to proceed.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's proceed as Mr. Galvin suggested. We'll entertain public comment now, and then Mr. Kronheim, I think your summation will only be stronger hearing the public comment. So with that, thank you. With that, we'll open the floor to the public comment. Again, one at a time. It's a little tough given the size here of the meeting. So
and let's talk about
we'll try to take it slow.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, could I jump in real quick?
Yes, Chris. Chris is our secretary. Go ahead.
Public to utilize the Zoom functions. We will go to every raised hand we get. So if you could please raise your hand and wait until we call on you, we will go one by one.
Well, okay. And listen, how many people, Chris, how many people we have online?
85.
All right. They're not all 85 people here to comment. There's 10 of us for the board. So, but what we will do is we're going to listen, try to be conscious of the fact that we don't have to take repetitive testimony. So if like 3 people in a row get up and said, we don't like the parking, you're not adding anything to it. You're not adding anything to the testimony. So you need to tell us something that adds to the story. Of course, if it's only 1 or 2 people who kind of are repetitive, we'll probably give you a little latitude. But if it gets to the 3rd or 4th person, it's going to just say, I don't like the parking on this street. I don't think that helps the board in its deliberations, and we have a right to restrict that. So I just tell you before you go. The other thing is I'm going to put everybody who does testify under oath. So the first 2 people that I see are a Mr. McLaughlin. So I'm going to put Mr. McLaughlin on first, and then Rabbi Freeman second, because those are the hands I see. So Mr. McLaughlin, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm a testimony about the given this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Ish McLaughlin, McLaughlin. I live at 7 Essex Road in Summit.
You may proceed.
Great. Look, I've only lived in Summit for half of the 38 years, which my neighbor, Mr. Marvin, has. But, I've seen very much of what he's experienced. And while I am 3 blocks away from Waldron, I'm extremely concerned about the significant additional parking burden this project represents on the edge of our neighborhood and the edge of the town. And while that does sound redundant to what you've heard so far, I feel like it's important to continue to reference that is the concern of contiguous neighbors of the property and the project.
That's it. Anything else?
No, thank you very much for listening.
Great job. Rabbi, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. State your full name for the record. Spell your last name.
Avi Friedman, Friedman. And I live at 34 Hartley Road. And I've actually come to this meeting wearing 2 hats. I'm not only a resident of Summit, I'm also the leader of a religious institution, Congregation Or Shalom, and a past president of the Summit Interfaith Council. So first, as a resident, I feel so fortunate to live in a city like Summit with all of the amazing resources and institutions. However, I realize that all of us have to give up a little something to enjoy all those benefits. I personally live between Tatlock Field with the football field and the lacrosse field and Oratory Prep. And I need not tell the members of this board that both of those places have undergone changes in the last 15 years since I've moved here that have had an impact on traffic in my neighborhood. But that's the price I pay for living in an amazing community like Summit. And I know that residents who live near the high school or the middle school or the primary centers can all say the same thing. And as long as these community treasures, and Beacon is a community treasure, are all spread out around the city and not concentrated in a single neighborhood, that's a fair price for us all to pay to benefit from these amazing institutions. Now, wearing my other hat, I want to address something that I have seen on social media and have heard around town, namely that Beacon is not being a good neighbor. And to my mind, nothing could be further from the truth. You can't judge a neighbor or an institution or a congregation based on a single issue like parking, no matter how important that issue might be. For example, when there have been problems in our community, like say homeless people in our train station or bus stops, some residents complain and come to meetings like this, but our friends from Beacon roll up their sleeves and find ways to help those folks and find them somewhere to sleep and food to eat. When there's a challenge in our community, we can count on the clergy and the members of Beacon to be there to help us face that challenge. And they're exactly the kind of neighbors that I want in my community. And if they need this expansion to continue being such an important part of our community, then I, for one, am in favor of granting them the variances they need in order to do so. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Rev. The next person I'm going to call on is Tim Swoop, because he doesn't have the computer hand. He's got his real hand up. So I'm going to cut him a break.
Thank you very much, sir.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear? Oh, okay. Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Kindly state your full name for the record. Spell your last name.
Timothy Swope, and I live on Hobart Ave.
All right. Fire away, Tim.
I will, I live a few streets down from Mr. Marvin, and basically looking at the parking report, they also expect that there will be parking used on Hobart Ave also. So that really expands it. When David Molin asked, how would denying this bring back your residential street? And actually, Mr. Marvin, and I agree with him, said it would make it worse. Not only that, it expands it down to our street and really congests this. And, there's also another church across the street. I don't know if anybody's discussed it with them, how that would affect their parking. Another thing that someone mentioned was, we could use the parking lots in also to alleviate some of the parking. Well, I think we forget that there's a farmer's market that's on Sunday in the summer, and it's in the morning. So, these things should be discussed also. But again, no one builds an extra 400 seats and just uses it on Sunday. This will be a multi-use facility, and I'm opposed to this, and I think it would be definitely negatively affect the town.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands. All right, you're gonna have to wait, Emmy. Okay. Amy, raise your right hand. By the way, everybody, I'm doing the best I can. This is like weird to do this. You guys moved. You moved on me. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm a testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. State your full name. State your name for the record. Spell your last name.
Sure. Amy DeCibio. It's D like David I, capital S like Sam I, B like boy I-O.
And your street address?
I live at 1 Essex Road.
Fire away.
So our home is on the corner of Essex and Springfield Avenue. And pretty much the main reason we moved to Summit 20 years ago was because of the wonderful downtown and our ability to walk to town. And I really think that, I remember watching the church do their first renovation, and as much as I think it's beautiful, and they really did, a nice job, and it took a long time for them to accomplish that, and I applaud their efforts. I think the church is much bigger now than the existing church was back in the day. I know they also ate up a bunch of parking spaces at the time, but I also think that the building is quite large and a little bit overwhelming for the neighborhood as it is. As you walk to town or drive to town, right in front of that church is a sign that says, "Welcome to historic downtown Summit." It's the mouth of our shopping district right there. It's a beautiful entrance and gateway into downtown. And I really feel that a new building, a big structure that will be, it'll be daunting and really, and will really overwhelm that beautiful approach to town. As far as some of the parking issues go, I echo all of that, but I would also say anyone who doesn't think we have a parking issue in town doesn't spend much time in town. As I say, I drive rarely if I can avoid it. And every time I drive to town, I have to park so far from where I want to go. I always say, why did I even bother driving? I should have just walked. So that's really all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Mr. Wagenbach, you ready? Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah, thank you. Jeff Wagenbach, 34 Hobart Avenue. For reference, that my house is one house away from Springfield Avenue on Hobart. I've only lived here for 25 years, but I've lived in Summit for most of my life. I also have a little bit of a perspective in that I was on the planning board for 13 years and was 10 years as chair. So I've heard a few traffic experts in my day. I've never heard an applicant's traffic expert actually testify that there was any impact. I didn't believe it when I was on the board. I would suggest that the zoning board not believe everything the expert says now. I can assure you there is already a parking problem as far out as Hobart Avenue. Every Sunday during the summer, there are cars on my street parking. It's a public street, they're allowed to park, but they're walking over to the farmer's market. Great, wonderful. To suggest that there is not going to be an exacerbation of an existing problem with 400 additional seats and zero parking, I question the credibility of that. I would urge the board to be very careful about how it addresses this. I heard with some interest the idea of a jitney. Sounds attractive. How do you force parishioners to use a jitney? I don't know how much it works. I was persuaded by Ms. Adams' testimony on that score. I hope the board carefully considers the application. I have found Beacon to be a wonderful neighbor over the 25 years I've lived here. I don't really know that this is the right way to treat the neighborhood, notwithstanding that history. Thanks.
All right. Next, I'm going to go to two couples, one at a time. First, I'm going to go to Peter Toohill. Raise your right hand or right hands. You guys are jumping around. Why is this screen jumping around? Did you raise your right hands? Okay. Do you swear or affirm a testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Peter Toohill, great job on the pronunciation. Touhill, and it's Kristen Toohill, same last name.
Kristin.
Just her last name.
That's fine. That helps. It helps.
And we live at, sorry, go ahead.
Street address.
10 Waldron. So we're
adjacent to the church.
Adjacent to the church.
Okay.
So I'm just going to read to keep it brief. Everyone's talked about the parking, and I agree with what everyone said.
We've had our driveway blocked.
We've had our driveway blocked, the whole works. I mean, everything's been said. It's really something, and I'm just afraid this is going to continue to exacerbate that issue. While the church says it'll reduce services, which may help me, but may not help, the people on Hobart. I mean, I imagine we're not going to have a prohibition to, add even more services, which is just another concern as, at increasing the size of the church, just afraid that that's just going to continue to increase the size of the membership, which I can appreciate is a good thing, but just having more services and more parking issues. While I understand and appreciate the amount of time and money the church has spent planning this project, it just seems that the church and the surrounding neighborhood would be better off if they move to a location outside of a downtown where there's no parking, as a majority of the congregation is from outside Summit. But that said, if it is approved, I just want to know that I can't possibly envision all the ways this is going to directly impact my property. I'm right next door. And I just want to make sure there's some sort of avenue for, whether it's drainage or lighting or, I just can't even imagine all the ways it's going to affect me, that I have a way to go to the town to remedy something that's just really having a negative impact on my property since I'm right next door. And then the last two things.
Well, because just a note, there's a fence. They bought the Dangler funeral home, and there was a fence that is between our property and theirs. And there's a wall, and I saw in the plans that they're going to leave part of the wall, but there was a picket fence that had fallen down with part of the wall 6 years ago, maybe. And we'd approached them shortly after, even offering to pay for the picket fence. We weren't sure exactly based on the surveys we realized later it's their fence, it's their wall, because the light post on the end of it is connected to the Dangler funeral home building. That's where the lights go off and on. And they refused to, fix it, or even for us to contribute to fix this. So we've had this broken down fence eyesore in the back of our house for 6 years or so. And so people have said they're a good neighbor to them. I mean, maybe they are, but we're adjacent to them, and we haven't, experienced that. So I don't know how we're going to be impacted.
And then the last thing I'll note is just, I think if I recall, they have 2 years to start building, and then, it's got to be a year or two after. I mean, it's just going to have a significant impact on our property values for up to 4 years, to the extent it's going to be hard to sell our house if we wanted to move for 4 or 5 years anyway. It's just, it has a material impact and potentially very negative impact on our property value and potentially on our quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now the next couple is Anne Marie Cahill's couple. Okay. Raise your right hand and come off on mute. All right. Do you swear or affirm a testimony about the given this matters, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Why can't I hear you? You're off mute. Come off mute. There you go. Talk now. Your microphone's not working.
Anne-Marie, if you and Tom want to come across to our house, you're welcome. We've got a working microphone.
I'll move on to somebody else while you're doing that. Okay? Where's Emmy? There you go. I see you now, Emmy. Okay. Raise your right hand, Emmy, and come off of mute. You gotta come off of mute. You don't know where the mute button is.
Got it. I got it.
There you go. You got it. Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm a testimony about the given this matters, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You know, this technology is hard because it's the first time you're seeing it. But once you see it a couple times, it's not as daunting or scary as it seems. Go
I
ahead.
understand.
Yeah.
I know we've been talking about parking, and I do think it's a major issue. My name is Emmy Havas, H-A-V as in Victor, A-S. I'm a longtime business owner in the downtown at 4 Beechwood Road. And I know Nancy spoke very well. I have served on Summit Downtown. I've served on the Chamber of Commerce. I have been on the parking committee for years. I've been in business for 36 years in the downtown. And I will tell you that parking is what is strangling our downtown. And anything that is going to impact on that is going to be terrible. I hear at least once a day people complaining. And I live in Watchung, and I have very good friends who won't even come to Summit to shop because they say there is no parking. So we have a lot of people that don't even come because they don't feel they can park. And we have a lot of people who do come who are very upset about the parking. So anyone who says there isn't a parking problem, I'll echo it again. There is, and this will just add to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, Cassie Burke, you're the last person I see with a hand up. Ms. Marvin, all right. Cassie, come off. And
I have a hand up as well.
Who's that? State your name.
Well, I'll let the next person speak, but you said that was the last person. My hand is up.
How come I don't see it? What's your name? Mr. Feeney?
KM Feeney, yes.
Okay, hang in there.
And
big
Gene
guy.
Gorbach as well. I will.
All right. All right, guys. There's an actual button that you can push to put your hand up. Okay. Oh.
Okay,
All
so
right.
am I up?
Yes, you are, Cassie.
Okay.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm a testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
So my name's Cassie Burke.
What's your street address?
65 Hobart Avenue.
All right, fire away.
30 years. So for those of you who don't know, I'm probably 2 blocks around the corner from the church. And I know that Waldron has been inundated with traffic issues and parking issues on Sunday, and the town has made accommodations and made it so that people can only park on one side of the street. My concern is, if this should pass, what are your plans for Hobart Avenue? I mean, Hobart Avenue, we have ambulances going up and down, fire trucks going up and down constantly. And if we have parking on both sides of the street, I'm very concerned about the safety of not only, my children and pedestrians, but just the ability for these emergency vehicles to fit down the road if we've got parking on both sides.
This is your time to comment. No one's going to answer your question.
Shoot. Okay, well, there's something to think about.
All right, thank you. All right, next I'm going to go to, hold on, I got you, Mr. Feeney, but hold on, okay? Next, you got to understand too, I'm looking at the screen and people are bouncing in and out, right? They're coming on, they're coming off. I was going to go with Ann Marvin next. Anna, you ready? You're on mute. Are you off?
I'm good.
Okay, go ahead. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm a testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Right.
And name is Ann Marvin, M-A-R-V-I-N. I live at 12 Waldron Avenue, same side of the street as the church. You heard from my husband earlier. A few points that I don't think, I'm trying not to say the same thing.
I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. As you know, we lived through the changes that the church went through in 1999. And the church leadership, I know is different now than it was then. But I think it's important for the board to understand that what we were told in 1999 is not what we're living with. I'm not saying anybody lied, but once something is approved, I find that life moves on. We were told no nighttime meetings. We were told those properties on Whitridge were being sold when they had their school building and their parking lot, and all that was being brought down to Springfield Avenue, just so that the children wouldn't be having their Sunday services down the block, and they were going to consolidate. And we expressed the same concerns then that we did now. And we were told that things weren't going to change. There will be nothing at night, nothing on the weekends, just the services. Once these things get approved, that's not how this goes. So that's one point. We have been in touch with the town we've been in touch with the church many times over the years to try to work this out. We, call the police constantly because we can't get out of our driveway. One of the things the church has done is have on a Sunday morning, pre-pandemic, some of their people come down Waldron and they put cones at the edge of our driveway, which is a very kind, neighborly thing to do. But the people that want to park to go to church, get out of their cars, move the cones, put the cones on the sidewalk, and park there, further blocking us in. Those people are in a hurry. It's cold, it's rainy, it's whatever. They want to be close, they're rushed, they're in a hurry. It's just the way life is. So I just want to make sure that the board considers that, 5-10 years from now, are we really going to have an empty 400-seat structure here? Or is it going to be used? We have a smallish building here now used almost every night. What's it going to be when it's that much bigger? The other thing I want to say is I work in a retail shop on Beechwood Road, and I know Emmy is on the same street and has a lot more retail experience, and she's a business owner, which I am not. But I think it is safe to say that 80% of the people that come into our shop complain about parking. They don't want to stay, they can't stay, they cannot shop. And it's every single customer has a complaint or an issue with parking. And I just think it's a 7-day-a-week business. It's not open at night, so we don't have the nighttime issues that Miss Adams was speaking about. But we do have it Monday to Friday. So that's our 7 days a week during the day. I didn't mean Monday to Friday. So I just think it's important that we keep these things in mind. And in a further response to an earlier board member's question about the fact that if Waldron only has X number of spaces, how is the situation going to get any worse? The situation gets worse because everybody wants to park on Waldron, on DeBarry, on Springfield, close by. And if you're coming to the church from sort of the New Providence end, you get to Waldron and you do a K-turn, which means you're in my driveway, you're in the Two Hills driveway. They have 4 tiny kids. My neighbors on the next door, 2 young boys. There's kids everywhere. And it's K-turning in, K-turning out, already parking, already cones. So that's traffic. Even though those people won't be successful because the 30-some spaces are already taken up, people are still going to be pulling down the street at 10 after 11, still looking for that same spot. So I think that volume is an issue, not just the number of spaces.
Okay, can I go on to the next person now?
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Feeney, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about giving this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, fire away.
Peter Feeney, Foxtrot, Echo, Echo, November, Echo, Yankee. I live at 32 Waldron Avenue on the church side.
Fire away.
I have 4 things I'd like to comment on. I'll try to keep them brief. The first one is we spent a lot of time talking about the issues and the problems that are going to occur once the construction is complete and the 400-seat auditorium is operational. My main concern has to do with during the construction and the staging of the construction. I haven't seen any plans as far as where this staging is going to take place. where the materials are going to be located, where the workers are going to congregate for lunch, where the porta potties are going to be staged for their use, where the vehicles that the workers are going to be working out of, where they're going to be parked, all of which will contribute to significant problems that we've already touched upon about when the project is complete.
Let me stop you there. The board hasn't asked for that because the board's not permitted to consider that. That's all run by the city itself and by the construction code official. And you have one of the best in the state in Gary. So he's going to figure that all out and make sure it works properly.
Thanks, Mr. Galvin. Point number 2. I applaud the board for trying to find solutions to mitigate this problem. But what I find comical is that when the variance was issued in 1999, as was stated by many members here, that there were certain restrictions put in place. And yet those restrictions have been ignored. They have not been accounted for, and they clearly have not been enforced. So if a mitigation occurs where we say that they can use valet services or shuttle services, who is going to enforce that? Who is going to police that? Who's going to stand up and be accounted for that? What's the standard? Clearly there isn't one. And if I was the church, and I'm not, I would agree to anything because clearly Summit's just going to let it go as they had since 1999. My third point, when I had to do a addition on my house in 2007, at the last minute, the city told me I had to put in 2 dry wells for drainage. Now, I've never had a flooding problem, but I had no problem doing it. And then again, even if I did, it didn't matter. The city demanded it. In the plans, I have seen no plans for dry wells for the new area that's going to be constructed if approved. So I have a question as far as the dry wells. What's going to happen there? My last point, it's more of a comment. I feel as residents that we are the underdog in this process. I feel as residents, we are being asked, and the city is being asked for a variance. In doing so, as the underdogs, I certainly feel that certain members of the board have treated us as underdogs. I specifically refer to a comment that was made earlier this evening where somebody mentioned that they have tried far more compelling cases than this one. So as a resident, I am concerned that we are not being treated fairly. Thank you.
All right. John Powell Freeman, raise your right hand and take yourself off of mute.
There you go.
Was I close?
Yep, it's actually very good. Pal from me.
Okay, thanks. No, don't tell me that. My head gets big. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
State full name for the record. Spell your last name.
John Palfreyman, Palphreyman.
And your street address?
7 Waldron Avenue.
All right. Please tell us what you have to say.
Thank you. I have one observation, and it doesn't relate to parking, although, clearly I agree with everybody's comments that this will be a large parking burden on the city. My observation is this, and I've raised this privately with several people and tried to get some focus on it. And I'm not even sure that it's within your parlance, the purview of the board, and it probably isn't, but this is a public record and I'd like to go on into the public record. Presently, the Dangler Funeral Home is a commercial business and pays somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 a year in taxes. This is on record. You can just go on the internet and find this out. The church is a tax exempt organization. There seems to be no consideration anywhere to the fact that the church is going to take a tax-paying business off the tax rolls of the city of Summit.
Because we can't, John.
Understood. And
it's against the law, but yes, make your point.
I have run present value analysis of that. And depending upon your assumptions for future path of interest rates, that's a gift of anywhere from $3 to $7 million present value. That may not be something that anyone has any purview to consider, but I think it's something that should be in the record. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Now let's see. I thought I saw, let's see. Is anybody else want to comment?
Gene on the bottom.
Yeah.
Right here.
Right
Yes.
here.
We're not all looking at the same screen. That's why that's not working.
Okay.
Gene, okay, Gene, I got you. Gorback, ready?
Yep.
All right, man. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about the given this matters to? I wasn't going to say anything. All right. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about the given this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Say your full name for the record. Spell your last name.
Last name is Gorbach. First name is Eugene.
All right. And what's your street address, Gene?
14 Waldron Avenue.
All right. Fire away.
Thank you. I will read a brief statement. This board has heard from a number of constituents, exasperated neighbors, concerned for quality of life and safety, business owners who are already on thin ice, and from traffic, parking, and quality of life professionals who clearly state that there's already a challenge in traffic and parking in downtown Summit. I understand and I appreciate the intent and the legal obligation to not put undue impediments to the church, but this board has clearly demonstrated due diligence in so carefully evaluating this application. This is not a hard decision. There's a 400-seat expansion being planned without any additional parking, and contrary to Summit Downtown direct and existing initiative to ease, not increase, but to ease the significant traffic and parking issues that are already in place today. This board's overall objective should be to look out for the residents and businesses of Summit. I urge the board to reject this application. This move endangers not just Waldron, but another 5 to 6 streets and would make the entire downtown of Summit largely impassable. The bottom line is that the location of the church itself, unfortunately, is precarious, and any expansion would adversely impact the neighborhood and the downtown. A dramatic expansion of this facility without parking will make a substantial adverse impact to the neighborhood and the downtown. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gene. Mr. Chairman, what do we think? Up, Mr. Bumgars.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Galvin. Good to see you again.
Oh, it's always good to see you.
Yeah.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about the given this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Say your full name for the record. Spell your last name.
Dave Baumgars, Bomgaars, 103 Maple Street in Summit.
Please.
I've been a resident of Summit for approximately 35 years, served on the council and also on the zoning board. So I appreciate all the good work you members of the zoning board are doing with this case. I also served on the board of SDI Summit Downtown, and we've heard from different folks like Emmy Hayes from Summit Downtown. I'm going to make a correlation here with another activity I've been involved in, and that's with Central Presbyterian Church. So I'm not speaking on their behalf, although I am a officer of the Board of Trustees. I'm not presenting any of their views. I'm comparing the two churches, and I wanted to say that we're blessed at Central Presbyterian Church where we're located, because we can use a public lot, we can use a middle school lot, we can go across the street to the library lot on Sunday. However, we have a sanctuary capacity of about 450 people, 450 members, and we have about 10% of that number of parking spaces on property. So I'm hearing, and I read through the application, I'm hearing that the applicant wants to build out another 400 sanctuary. They have existing 200 sanctuary now with 17 parking spaces, so a little less than 10%. We're going to put 400 in there with no percentage for parking, which is crazy. So, I'm with the residents and I'm with FCI, but for a compromise, and the Unitarian Church has become a mega church. Probably always has been a regional church. Maybe 11% are local residents. Everybody's driving in. But the church has to come through and build, in my opinion, at least 10% of that additional 400 in parking spots on site, or some other percentage that can be negotiated. So they can get what they want, a larger sanctuary for attendees, new members, and it'll lessen the blow, especially on SDI. I'm not sure if it'll lessen it much on the neighbors, because I really feel for those on Waldron and Ruthven and Franklin Place, but it is what it is. And you know, there's a way to compromise. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
All right. Amy, you went already. We don't do Tuesdays. It's too hard. There's too many people involved. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that. The
I have one
Cahills,
comment.
I'd like to speak.
who are you?
I'd like to speak.
Hannah Orden.
You have to wait. All right?
Joseph Hamilton, Mr. Galvin.
You guys are going to wait, okay? Just wait. I'll get back to you.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
see. I have the hands up. I was looking at the Cahills.
Yep,
and
we're here. You can hear us?
You can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay.
Raise your
Okay.
right hand.
Right here.
Do you swear or affirm a testimony about to give this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Tom Cahill, 11 Waldron Ave, formerly 13 DeBerry, which we still also have a house on DeBerry, a rental property, which we moved from about 10 years ago over to Waldron because after multiple appeals to the zoning board, one neighbor rejected and said, we don't like your addition idea. So the board rejected it and we moved to a bigger house. I bring that up because I'm not happy with the fact that the church hasn't offered us any solutions for parking. And I want the zoning board to know that. We asked them about shuttles. We asked them about valets. We asked them about if they would give up not having concerts, 3 or 4 days a week. We asked for solutions. We asked for answers. They came up with nothing. We told them that the project was too big for our block. We told them they needed to scale it back. We didn't like the backup to our neighbors, the two hills across the street. Nothing was changed. Nothing was there's no resolve. And the fact that they will say they'll work with us and they'll abide by rules is not going to happen. So I just want the board to know that clearly. And the fact that the lawyer is going to go back and ask them about a shuttle is not really going to make any difference. The other point I want to make is everyone's made it clear about the parking, but the big problem is the traffic. And it's not traffic bumper to bumper. I have to sit in a little traffic to go downtown. It's people making K-turns, flipping in driveways, backing in and out of driveways, hitting bicyclists. We had neighbors in the Palpman's driveway hit a bicyclist, hit a jogger's been hit. I mean, it's at this small size, it's a huge problem. I don't know how this board can't look at tripling in size being a worse of a case. Anne-Marie has something to say on that.
I just wanted to add what I was going to say. The problem with the zoning approvals, there's no one policing it. We, the neighbors, have to police what is put into place. We've caught the church renting out rooms as hall for hires, and they've broken the 99 resolution rules. The church breaks the signage resolution rules from 1999. They're supposed to have 2 signs, and they've had up to 6 advertising signs at one time. It just seems that over the course of the years, the church has shown a conscious indifference to adhering to the 99 resolutions voted on by the then zoning board. So what makes everyone think they're going to follow them this time? That's all.
Thank you very much. All right, now I have Brian Pinto, but it doesn't look like a Brian.
Can you unmute?
All right. Do you swear or affirm a testimony you're about to give this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And state your full name, Brian.
My name is Leanne Pinto. I'm using my husband Brian Pinto's phone.
I'm kidding. Go ahead. Just spell your last name and give us your street address.
Pinto, like the bean, Pinto.
Use Pinto like the bean, Pinto.
Well,
Because when I unplugged it, it didn't play. So I'll tell you what's just.
We all hear you.
Let me try again.
So I am speaking on behalf of Ruth Ben Place. We're right around the corner from the Beacon Church. The Scientist Church is on our street as well. So I echo what Ms. DeStibio said a while back on the expansion and the size of what is planned for Beacon. The Scientist Church is rather large. However, there's also a parking lot there. We do notice traffic from that on Sundays. And I echo some of the same concerns on traffic, parking, etc. To the extent that we have the same concerns here on Ruthven as Waldron, we certainly do not. However, I think, I mean, I speak for myself and my husband, and I think a large majority of our neighbors here on this street, that we do not agree with and support the expansion of Beacon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm looking for others. I see, okay, next two I see are Joe Hamilton and Lori. So let's do Joe first. Joe, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Joseph Hamilton, Hamilton.
All right, and what's your street address, Joe?
I own the building at 306 Springfield Avenue, which is right across the street from this project, proposed project.
Okay.
So I would just,
Oh, this guy's crazy.
I would just,
you mean me?
Just ask again, if you're not providing testimony, to please mute your microphone. Thank you, Mr. Hasselman.
Whoop.
so, I would just like to.
I was watching TV, sorry.
Me too. Go ahead, Joe.
I would just like to say that I agree with Nancy's testimony this evening. All of the public that has spoken this evening, I agree to their testimonies, and I request for the board to reject this application.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank
Lori,
you.
Ready? Raise your right hand. The other right hand. There you go. Do you swear? There you go. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about giving this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
My full name is Lori Combias, Combias. I grew up in Summit. I've been a resident for 65 years. My grandparents lived on Ruthven, and I live in downtown Summit now. I live on Maple Street. I own a building on Maple Street, and I had a business in that building for 18 years, and I can attest that my customers complained about the parking all of the time. But that's really not the issue here. I was witness to something very remarkable this summer, and that was the closing of the street. And I have never seen a community come together to support the restaurants. I could look outside my window every night, and Maple Street was just filled with people outside dining. And it was so popular that I honestly think that it's something that they may continue every summer. And the parking, we need the parking. Our residents need the parking. The people who support the downtown need the parking. And I just don't think it's a good idea first of all, the church is beautiful as it is, and I can't imagine it being any bigger in a neighborhood in Summit, and I just can't imagine all of the parking spots that will be taken by the people that go to this church. Anyway, that's really all I have to say. It would be a big change.
Kristen Lumalu. Ready, Kristen? Come off on mute. And then Tony, you're going next. Okay? Right, raise your right hand, Kristen. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about giving this matters the truth? Lori, go back on mute. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about giving this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Say your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Kristen Lumello, LumellEau.
And your street address?
I live at 15 Fernwood Road.
All right, please proceed.
First of all, Fernwood Road is, if you go up Waldron, Fernwood Road is almost the continuation of Waldron. So as a resident on Fernwood, I'm very concerned about the parking extending to when people have talked about DeBerry, Hobart, but I'm sure the natural extension, if you go down Waldron, you look for parking, you're just going to continue on Fernwood. All of a sudden, all of Fernwood is going to be subjected to the extra parking. Second of all, I do want to go back to the issue of the actual construction of this.
We can't talk about that really. The construction department will manage that. They always have to. They have to. It's their job.
Okay, I understand that, but I do want to mention right at Waldron and Springfield, you know, cars come up Springfield, they go fast, they come to town, and right there at that intersection, it's a very constricted little area. You have parking on both sides of the street of Springfield with Waldron, it's very constricted. If you add in construction, I mean, I understand this is not the job of the zoning, but you add in construction vehicles, it's going to provide a big traffic nightmare right there as you come into town, a very congested area. So that's all.
All right, thank you. Tony, you're next. Raise your right hand. I can't hear you. Why can't I hear you?
I don't know. I'm
now I
on.
can hear you. All right. Do you swear or affirm testimony about the giving this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Anthony Melchiona, 42 Maple Street, Salon 44.
Tony, spell your last name, Tony.
MELCH.
Wait a minute. One at a time, because I can't hear you when you both speak.
Thank you for interrupting me while I'm speaking. MELCHIONNA. 42 Maple Street, Salon 44 business. Also property owner of downtown Summit property, 42 Maple Street, 46 Maple Street, 48 Maple Street, 50 Maple Street, 77 Union Place, 79 Union Place, 81 Union Place, 83 Union Place, and 7 Union Place. Needless to say, I've been in town since 1982. I've been around the block. I know about parking. I know about business. I know about owning downtown properties. Through the PPP, through the pandemic, I have tenants who owe me. Anyhow, this is a 600-seat entity. I'm speaking from a business point of view. 600-seat entity that provides 0 parking. If I were to build a restaurant on one of my properties, I would have to build a certain amount of parking for, say, a restaurant. We have an entity here that wants to have 600 parking spaces for 600 seats. All I'm saying is this entity is not and should not be allowed in the downtown regarding parking. This has blown my mind since 1982. I've listened to hours and hours of people speaking about this. I'm against this, and I will stand up for it. Thank you.
Thanks. Nancy, I'm going to call on you next. I just want you to know you're sitting in the dark. Did you know that? Raise your right hand. Take yourself off of mute. Do you swear or affirm a testimony about to give this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Go ahead. Oh, state your name, state your last name, and give us your street address. I think I'm starting to get tired. Go ahead.
Sophie Cool, Coull, and I'm at 16 Ruthven Place. So the only point that I'd like to bring up, in addition to the traffic issue, was the fact that we needed to put in measures on Springfield Ave to add more stop signs because of the influx of traffic. So this is a measure that would increase traffic flow despite us already having to put measures in to decrease traffic and control what we already have and we're seeing through town. So by increasing a 400-seat capacity, that's completely ridiculous if you already have to have those measures. And not only to mention that, but the parking scene around this area in the neighborhood from the overspill from town on any day of the week, not just Sundays because of church, but from normal employees having to park on all the streets around here. In normal pre-pandemic times, our street was always full from like the top to the bottom, and there was never regulation. Maybe once in a blue moon would they give out tickets. And so this is only going to increase the traffic flow to a point where it's not manageable.
Thank you. Okay, Hannah. I saw your hand go up. All right, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. My name is My name is Hannah Orden. My last name is Orden. I live at 15 Irving Place.
Okay.
My husband and I have lived at Irving Place for the last 6.5 years. We have never been inconvenienced by the fact that people park on our street. People park on our street for lots of reasons. They park on our street to go into downtown. We're a block from the center of Summit. We're less than half a block from Beacon. And I don't actually understand why this entire discussion is about parking. If people will park on our streets near downtown for many reasons. I don't hear people saying that we shouldn't have businesses downtown because people are parking on our streets. And residents all have their own parking. So I don't understand what the problem is exactly. So, but there's some, so a few things just about parking, then I want to talk about something else. So people have said that this will triple the amount of people that coming. That's not actually true. They're going to have more people coming at one time, not more people coming. And so if you have 100 people coming 3 times during the day, then those people will park on your street 3 times. This way, they'll come in the morning. Those who can park nearby will. The others will park in the public parking lots, and they'll walk or they'll get dropped off. And this is not a mega church. I've been to mega churches. There are thousands of people. Someone mentioned Central Presbyterian, which is right in the center of Summit. There are several churches that are in the center of Summit that do not have parking. And so I guess, so I should confess that I'm a clergy person. I'm the rabbi of Congregation Beth Tikva. And I think that our houses of worship, and Beacon in particular, offer something to our town, to our city, that goes beyond parking. And for me, the first thing I see when I pull out of my driveway and turn onto Irving Place, the first thing I see is the beautiful historic building of Beacon. And that gives, that gives me pleasure, but much more than the building itself is what it stands for. This is a community of people who are compassionate, who care about our city deeply. Reverend Bogus serves on the board of SAGE. She volunteered to be on the new Silver Summit Committee for elders. They have warm hearts. They provide a warm place for homeless people to go. This is a community that cares about people and cares about our city. And it's a resource. It's a tremendous resource for our town, for this city. And the reason that they want to have a bigger sanctuary is because the building that they have was built over 100 years ago, and it doesn't fill the needs of a house of worship today. And we are extremely lucky at Congregation Beth Tikva in that we have a repurposed factory, and we created the space for the 21st century so that we have flexible space. We can open and close walls. We don't have pews. We have chairs. We can sit in a circle if you want to. We're completely accessible to wheelchairs. There are no stairs. And so as a clergy person, I have to say that, those things matter. I've been to their sanctuary many times. I've had to stand. I've had to sit behind columns so that I couldn't see anything. It's too small a space for the needs of that community, of that congregation. And that congregation is an asset. And I very, very strongly encourage you to allow them to do this expansion.
All right.
My husband wants to add something.
No, I just want to say that.
You got to raise your right hand, sir.
Sure.
Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give this matters the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. State your full name for the record.
John Moskowitz, Moskowitz.
By the way, you have the same sweater on that Mr. Feeney had on.
Really?
No, I'm kidding. I don't know.
Did my husband's aunt also
Yeah,
make it for?
this is
Mr.
my Aunt Rosalind's sweater.
Maybe she made one for Mr. Feeney also.
So I just want to lend my voice to support Beacon as a good neighbor, as an important part of the community. We have not, as my wife said, we've not been inconvenienced as far as parking goes, and I guess I just wish that this wasn't so adversarial, actually, and that there was a way for people to sort of understand each other's positions and find some kind of agreement.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment? We're going to take a break soon. Am I missing somebody, Chris? Did I miss anybody? I think, Mr. Chairman, I think we take a break here. I think we've done good. And we should take a break and then come back and have the two lawyers argue, and then we'll decide what to do.
I think we're right. I'm just doing one quick more scan through all the tiles in case your vision's failing you so late in the evening, Mr. Galvin.
I see one person. This will be the last person. There will be nobody else after this.
Dennis,
Okay.
we also have the written comments that were provided.
Yeah. They said there's going to be a problem with parking in the downtown. You with me?
Wow. Yeah.
Mr. Galvin, who was the last person you saw?
Andy say we could summarize them? Do you want to read them into the record?
Oh, whatever you think is best. I'm just letting you know we have 3 or 4.
Go ahead, take a look at them. Can you summarize them? I'm going to go to the next person and then you'll summarize them.
Okay.
All right. All right. You're on mute.
Is that me you're talking to?
That's it. Yes.
Hi.
You can't see me looking at you? Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm a testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Say your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Kelly Dabb, D as in dog, apple, apple boy.
Cool.
I live at,
Okay.
yeah. We live at
What's your street address?
256 Springfield Avenue.
All right.
The corner of Hobart. I just wanted to say that I very grateful and appreciate what the Beacon Church does for the community as well as for people outside of our community. However, with living on the corner of Springfield and Hobart, someone recently just mentioned about our brand new park stop signs. So we do want to reflect on the fact that those were put there only recently for a very good reason, and to help with the concerns of traffic in our community and in this area. Living as close as I do to town, I am a walking resident. I walk a lot into town, and that we understand being here that parking is prone, but we do have to understand that there are limits. And I hope that the church can come to a compromise, as the gentleman just before said, with the neighborhood with respect to allowing for some additional parking on their end. I appreciate that they want to grow, and that's understandable, but they do have to understand the limits of the town and the community.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I think now's a good point to take a break.
Do we want Chris to read the comments?
I'm sorry, Chris.
And then we'll take a break. Yep.
Read the names of the 4 people, and if they've already spoken tonight, don't read it.
No, these are all people that did not attend. First is David Shanker, Shanker. And he's at 21 Llewellyn Road. He's writing in opposition of the application for the Unitarian Church to build 600-seat facility without any accommodations for parking.
All right.
Michael McTurnan is adding his voice to the many in the Summit community, asking the zoning board to reject the application for the church for their proposed expansion with zero regard for parking implications.
That's good. Go to the next one.
Mr. James Bennett, 38 Fairview Avenue. expressing his objection to the above referenced application, which is the Unitarian Church project. He notes that the zoning officers noted that the existing house of worship has no on-site parking.
That's
No.
good too. Go to the next one. Sorry, I'm helping you, Chris.
Okay, and we have one more that was sent via email. Let me pull that one up.
Is that one in favor?
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Keep going.
This is from Elliot Fishman, and he writes, "Dear members of the Summit Zoning Board, I used to live on Ruthven Place. Cars from the Unitarian Church always parked on our block and surrounding residential blocks every Sunday morning. Cannot imagine a spillover and congestion into other residential streets and downtown if the church triples in size. It's totally out of scale of the town to have a mega church without its own dedicated parking lot."
All right, that's good. That seems to be the sentiment of the objectors. So that's where we're at, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. So we're going to take a 5-minute recess and then we'll return. We'll hear a summation from Mr. Kronheim, any remaining commentary from Mr. Maynard on behalf of the applicants, and then proceed into deliberations for the board.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm going to reach out for my client about that question about shuttle service. Might take a few more than 5 minutes. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I'll come back on as soon as I possibly can.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Maynard.
Okay, thanks.
Oh.
Need Chris to come back here and then we can begin again. So hang tight, Michelle, just another moment.
Okay.
Thanks. Oh, there he is. Hey, Chris. All right. So by my count, we have all board members back. And I see Mr. Maynor, and let me just make sure. Mr.
Diana's
Cronin.
not there yet.
Yep, okay.
Mr.
All right,
Mr. Maynor, did you talk to your client?
I did. I did talk to them.
Wait, you don't have Diane in the chair yet. I'm asking you. We're missing Diana Sager, our new board member.
Okay, so I'll wait. I'll wait.
Hang tight. Oh, Diana, if you can hear us. Oh, there she is. All right. Thanks.
Diana, go ahead.
Right. Please proceed,
Tell-
Mr. Maynor.
Okay, so I did, I was able to reach my client and talk a bit about adding a shuttle service or some kind of valet service. It turns out something they've actually talked about internally. They're certainly willing to do it for Sunday services. It would, what we would envision would be something that would shuttle parishioners to and from some kind of probably a public lot that's empty on Sundays. I think the Broad Street lot was suggested, and we actually try to get people to park there anyway. So that would be a logical location. I think it's pretty empty on Sundays. We'd have to have some kind of van service to get people back and forth. But it's something we're certainly willing to do. I think in terms of the application, we certainly, Mr. Galvin could certainly craft a condition. I can't tell you, having talked to them for 10 minutes about it, we know every detail, but we certainly could craft a condition.
I have a concern about that. I think based on what I'm hearing tonight, I think it's very important that we not craft a condition on the fly in this case, that I'm going to screw it up. And I think we need time. So my advice to everybody is, let's hold off for at least a meeting and think about this.
Well, we could, if that's the board's preference, we certainly could do that. I mean, we could come back with and we'd have to present what our plan would be, so you could be aware of what that would be. But we certainly could do that. So I think, but all we'd come back to do really would be to present that and then sum up.
I mean, look, one of the keys of the Seeker balancing test is that you provide conditions that mitigate the problems with the application. And really, to be honest, I don't have any conditions at this point. I mean, maybe compliance with the engineer's letter. So this would be of a high level functional importance to show how we can accommodate the major parking concern.
I agree. We also have, we had a condition that we would not have simultaneously full-blown services. So that would be the other condition.
Well, and the other thing I think you need to talk to the people about is you got to go look at the 1999 conditions. And there's been some testimony tonight that the 99 conditions haven't been complied with.
We disagree with that completely.
Okay, well, I would like you to go back and look at that list and be able to address that a little bit to give us, give the board some confidence that it's been compliance, because that would be a condition too, is to continue the 1999 conditions.
Yes, we had suggested that in our application. And in fact, Reverend Bogus covered that in her testimony the first night, but it was a long time ago.
So, yeah, and that's what happens with a case like this. It goes on and you forget.
Yes, it does.
So that's.
Yeah, so I think, Mr. Maynard, and with that, and Mr. Cronheim, I've got my other eye trained on you as well. We'd like to give, Mr. Maynard and the applicant the opportunity to investigate the condition that had been proposed by the board members with a little bit more depth.
Diane has a question. What do you got, Dan?
Was there also discussion about making it a concrete condition that the church not have more than one regularly scheduled Sunday service on a regular basis going forward?
That's problematic for us to restrict that.
Is that right?
I think the RLUIPA, the restriction, we can't restrict the practice of religion.
Okay.
They're telling you that they're going to do this. The problem is, like, I can't, we can't overly regulate that. They're promising us that we have to, on that level, trust a little bit.
I understand. Okay.
There are things to do that we can control. We could require parking in a certain location. We can require that there be, that in order to have these services that they're going to have, some sort of transit to a parking area, but that's not in front of us yet.
Hey, Dennis, I had a question just along the lines of what you're talking about.
Yeah, Dave.
I think one thing we've heard throughout all of the commentary from the public is it seems like adherence to conditions and enforcement mechanisms of conditions are lacking. So I don't know what we can build into something around adherence and having an adequate enforcement mechanism outside of, the local police, which, it seems like we've had some mixed reports as to, how they're approaching that. But, that's something I don't know how we get the applicants and objectors to think about that, but that's sort of weighing heavily on my mind here. And I'd certainly like them to address that.
Yeah, the other thing, you have a very, very good zoning official, and I'm surprised when people say that, the conditions weren't enforced. But I think the other thing is, it's not the same thing as a single family residence or a commercial business. When you have churches, sometimes you have to give them, because of the things that they do in the community, you give them a little latitude. But the question is, when is that latitude too much and it has a negative impact? Right. I mean, and the thing that everyone should understand is, I am very concerned with this RLUIPA, because if we get this call wrong, we have the town will have financial exposure. So I want to make sure that we're responsible, and we are definitely looking at this from the SECA. We got to look at it from the SECA balancing test, which is, there's a special case called SECA that says that something like a church is an inherently beneficial use. And even though it's deemed to meet the positive criteria of the statute and gets kind of like a leg up on getting a use variance, the applicant still has to address the negative criteria, and it still has to reconcile with the master plan. And the key component of this is to try to find conditions to make the square peg fit into the round hole. So that's where basically, I think we're punting for at least the meeting to find out what this magical condition could be that will help out with the parking issue. So when can we go to, what do you think, Roger? Again, contribute. David, do you have anything you want to contribute on this?
I think your course of action is a good one, Mr. Galvin.
Thank you. All
No,
right.
we'll get right on looking into what the details might be. So,
All right. Chris, you're the man. When are we going to?
It's not looking great in the near future. You're looking more like, let me see.
Well, the answer is it depends. Someone else might get punished by this. This has been hanging around for a while.
March 15th is our first available, where it's the only thing that would be on there. We have some residentials slotted for the first meeting in March, on March 1st. February 19th, we have the Ashwood subdivision, or I'm sorry, not Ashwood, the one on, what is it, Park Avenue?
What do I have? February 19th, a Friday.
17th, I'm sorry. That's the continuation of Bart Sheehan's case for the subdivision.
Well, that might work actually, because we've completed the public testimony. All we have to do is hear what the condition is, and then we'll have both attorneys give their closing arguments. And so I think an hour should be sufficient for us to complete. I think we can finish now, but I don't know. I feel like we'd be doing everyone a disservice if we don't try to craft an intelligent condition.
Right. Mr. Maynard, any opinion on those dates as offered?
I think any of them, I mean, the sooner the better for us, really, given how long we've been doing this. But I would agree. I don't see it taking any more than an hour. I mean, summation takes 10, 15 minutes. And I think this condition will actually be fairly straightforward once we do a little investigation. So.
Let's plan for February 17th, Chris. I think we can look at that agenda again, in the instance that Ashwood, I think there's one residential case that night as well. So maybe we can do a little bit of shuffling.
Okay.
So let's plan for February 17th.
Are we getting revised plans for this, Roger, or is it just in the
No. I think that all this would be, which is really a very brief presentation on what the arrangements would be for some sort of valet or really shuttle service for parking on Sunday. So I think that'd be fairly brief, and that's all it would be. It really wouldn't impact the plans.
Okay, and just to clarify, that's Wednesday, February 17th.
It's not Friday, huh?
No, not a Friday.
All right.
So we have your consent to carry it till that date, Roger?
Yes, and we waive whatever statutory time periods are involved for decision.
So we need a motion and a second to carry this without further notice to February 17th.
So moved. Second.
Who made the motion?
Dave Mullen got the motion, Tom Yuko got the second, and
good job. Go ahead. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Anyone opposed? All right. February 17th, everybody.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maynard.
Thank you.
Board members, hang in here. We got, I think, one. Chris, we just have meeting minutes to approve, or what do we have?
Yeah, we got one resolution, 65 Woodland Avenue. A revised version went out sometime this afternoon, I forget when. But the application number is ZB-20-2027. Eligible voting members are Mr. Mullen, Ms. Schwartzstein, Mr. Moore, Ms. Toth, and Vice Chairwoman Newell. We need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I second. There we go. Okay, Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
and welcome back, and Vice Chairwoman Newell.
Yes.
And we have a set of meeting minutes from December 22nd of 2020 to approve. Would somebody like to move those?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And seeing none.
Cool. All right, everyone. Thanks for your attention and patience this evening. Thank you, Dennis. And with that, we're adjourned.
All right.
Thank you, Michelle.
Aye, everyone.
Good night.